Welcome to the third think tanking session on module, as we call it, on the national visioning processes and data. And I was just told that probably based on the way the discussion since the morning flowed, what it looks like from outside is that what we are dealing with is, yes, maybe big data, understanding what that is, but is a big picture within which the data makes, is being leveraged. And when we talk about big picture, as different from big data, and of course you can't have a big picture without many pixels and therefore lots of data, but when you talk about big picture, you immediately associate within the smart partnership movement with the national visioning processes that are taking place for a number of years and which went themselves through various phases, and not only because of the socio-economic, political environments, local and global, but also because of the issues related to the emerging digital landscape and, of course, the data. Most of the national visioning or national visions since 1992 or so, when within CPTM we were alerted as a group that it is important to look at and to be part of prospecting from the future to today within Malaysia Vision 2020, and then Botswana, and then Mauritius, and then everybody else, including the other day Cameroon. When they got engaged in their own context within national visioning, of course they picked up on the way also the developments that are taking place in the emerging digital landscape and with the impact that data it makes that you are aware of or you're not aware of, but it looks like it is terribly important for us to understand that the national visioning today in 2016 and the years to come are not going to be similar processes as they were in the past. Again, not only because of the economic or social or political, but because of the different generations which are part of, different perspectives, different views of seeing data and seeing the value of visions in relation to the data that is managed today. So it is actually a turning point for national visioning processes, and most likely to be more visioning rather than visions as such stated, and therefore then going towards with the help of Ministries of Economic Planning and everybody else is unlikely. And you can see in countries, we were in Cameroon in April with Boniface is here, and we've seen that people are talking about real-time data rather than just data which usually national economic planning are collecting with the statistics in traditional manner. It makes a big impact. So the way of probably supporting national visioning processes is also different. So we had the opportunity to bring in Sheila Rones. Is a professor, but she is coming from the angle of data in relation to complex and strategic decisions within particularly government, but also private sector. And in particular in the last few years, alongside national security advisors, they had to develop try to develop a new way of supporting governments, and particularly presidents, to combine real-time impact of data, not only in relation to national security, or as is usually understood, but as is broadly defined, because according to Sheila, and I will put in a moment an extract from the webcast at the hub that she spent about 2 days or so here, and she was fascinated about the national visions that are taking place. The point is that there is no way that at the moment government structures can absorb the real-time data and the changes that are taking place as they happened. So therefore, the decision-making processes and the structures and connections between departments, it doesn't matter if it is Lesotho or Botswana or Malaysia or UK, the structures are lagging behind and they become dysfunctional. So there is this idea that one should probably bring in a different way of supporting the leaders to manage this situation for national visioning. So I will bring first of all an extract from Sheila. Sheila is in Singapore right now at a big meeting, and she could be online if we need her, but here we are. Please.
In 2008, the Project on National Security Reform, which was a congressional commission, included a vision working group, one of 10. And this was a massive overhaul and study of the United States national security system that provided the Congress recommendations for how to completely reconfigure what our national security system needed to look like for a 21st century world, since it had not fundamentally changed since the National Security Act of 1947. And even with Goldwater-Nichols Act, which required jointness within the Pentagon, we now needed to look beyond defense and look more broadly at what national security looked like today and just how interconnected all the elements of national power are, and develop an appropriate system for that. And the Vision Working Group recommended that there be more interagency and intergovernmental collaborative process capabilities within the White House. And the Center for Complex and Strategic Decisions is a prototype of what that might look like, so that we could develop some proof of concept. It is also based on the work of Professor Leon Firth, who was at George Washington University and the National Defense University. And Professor Firth worked on something called the Project on Forward Engagement, looking at a whole of government approach called anticipatory governance. His philosophies and theories have informed not only my work, but the work that he and I are continuing to do together as we move forward in developing these proof of concepts. Professor Firth was in the White House for 8 years during the Clinton-Gore administration, and he served as the National Security Advisor to the Vice President at that time. In 1990, I read the U.S. National Security Strategy for the very first time. It was also the very first time that I realized that there was nothing to hang it on to. When I think of strategy, I think of something that's hierarchical. And if you develop a national defense strategy or a national foreign policy, you need to attach that to a national policy or strategy of some sort. And it was really the first time that it became clear to me that the United States did not have any such document, and nor did it have any such process as a major part of how it conducted its affairs from day to day. In fact, more than 25 years ago, I then decided it was time for me to think about what would happen if the United States actually could develop such a process, a system, and a strategy. And that's when my work really began in earnest. This continues, unfortunately, to be the case. We don't develop grand strategies, and of course, a big part of this process is to figure out methods and mechanisms. And the Project on National Security Reform was a perfect vehicle to really examine that issue. In the private sector, as a professor of management in a business school, of course, I've been involved in how the private sector uses management tools. Some organizations use them better than others, but it was, why can't we do this in the U.S. government in particular? And that has been a part of what I hope will be almost a technology transfer from private sector to public sector, at least in terms of best practices. And so the real question is, what mechanisms should the U.S. government develop to do this? And that's an easy question, but it doesn't have any easy answers. Because the U.S. security is rooted in the successful integration of all elements of national power. And it's my understanding from my work that because of the methods of financing our federal government, especially through the congressional committee structure to the executive branch, there are clear limitations as to what we can and cannot do, what we call the colors of money, which have to do with who the money belongs to and who can spend that money, who has the authority to spend that money. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that arena that we have begun to talk about, but we haven't really addressed yet. And what is the basis for rethinking the national security system? And our working group defined national security in a very broad sense to look at the health and stability of all elements of national power, not just the traditional military establishment or military intelligence establishment, because that simply isn't sufficient. And the national security system, therefore, we defined very, very broadly. Although it came with a price, which is a lot of people were leery and didn't understand, and because it didn't conform to their belief system, it has provided a lot of challenges to us. But I think it's necessary either way. And the system scientist in me knows that we can't separate out these issues. They are intertwined. And so if you don't even make an attempt to understand the interconnections and interrelationships, you get into trouble. From the system scientist perspective, the national security system in the United States is a complex adaptive system, whether we say so or not. So I think we might as well say so. And then really step back and say, okay, now what does that really mean? What are the characteristics of complex adaptive systems so that we can deal with them in the real world? So we went out and identified a few of the characteristics. You have to be able to share information and collaborate horizontally in such a system. You have to accommodate unanticipated needs and partnerships, and frequently those that you haven't considered before. You need to ensure agility in the face of uncertainty. There's no other way to describe it. You need to incorporate ad hoc structures and processes, and perhaps most important, you need to maintain a long-term view. And that has been a very difficult task for us in the United States. But it is not just an understanding of complex systems. You have to understand that most of the messy problems that we address today are composed of complex systems of complex systems. And the military feels very comfortable with the notion of systems of systems. And that's because they deal with complicated systems like weapon systems. But they are only complicated. They are not complex. And when you add the complexity into the equation, you're dealing with a very different animal. And one of those characteristics of complex systems is you cannot predict and control what is going on inside the system. Well, you tell that to a military general and they don't want to believe it. But the reality is, in a complex system, you can't predict the behavior, nor can you control what's going on inside it. So you have to really understand the dynamics of that system if you expect to affect any change at all. I find it very troubling that most policymakers don't understand anything about complexity. They don't understand it's a natural phenomenon in the real world. And I think scientists, probably like me, have done a dreadful job of articulating why that matters to a policymaker. And there's an enormous amount of work, though, that needs to occur to make that real. But I've stopped trying to explain it in terms of the laws of thermodynamics, which is natural for a physicist to want to do, because the laws of thermodynamics are difficult to understand. They include a tremendous amount of mathematics, and so we try to find ways within the English language to describe complex systems. And they may not work as well as some would like, but I think they're better than trying to just, give a lot of equations and explain it that way. So that we start with the most important premise, which is complex systems can't be controlled. The good news is they can be influenced. But they can only be influenced if you understand them intimately. I mean intimately. And so you really have to have a method to understand things in a very deep way. And from the standpoint of the U.S. government, we said, we have a lot of people with a lot of knowledge within the United States government, in the State Department, in the entire military intelligence establishment, but somebody needs to coordinate that. And we really need to create a method to do that. And honestly, in a 3-branch of government representative democracy, we don't have a prime minister, but we do have capabilities within the executive office of the President of the United States. So that's where we think the center needs to exist. Subsequent to the project on national security reform, it has become clear to us it is also necessary in the other 2 branches of government. And we're just beginning now to do the kinds of studies that are necessary to determine where this capability would need to reside in those branches. But we don't have very many answers yet. We hope we're asking the right questions. The reason for that is we need to find methods to synthesize all of government's solutions to complex system issues and problems, and sometimes all of society. And I put solutions in quotes for a reason, and that's that very few complex system issues have solutions. And they certainly don't have one solution. They may have multiple solutions. And sometimes the best you can hope for is to ameliorate a situation, to make it better. But to actually solve a problem is impossible. Now, we think that foresight is a key component of our approach because in a story, you can illustrate systemic effects and you can illustrate complexity without forcing somebody to have to learn the physics and mathematics of why it is the way it is. But you can explore in a story and you can learn in a story. And one of the most important elements of complexity is you need to be in a continuous learning mode of what is going on inside the system if you want to have an impact on that system. So we have created what we call visionarios, which are very in-depth stories that they use disciplined foresight processes, but they also marry them to the science of complexity and systems, to the point where now we're trying to actually build complexity science algorithm models at Argonne to reflect and test different assumptions in a complex system, agent-based models. And it's a very powerful tool, and it can enable you to improve and inform public policy decisions. There are 5 general questions that we almost always ask of the visionario. What are the stressors in the scenario? Was the system able to anticipate the problems described? How well was the system able to react? How well was the system able to recover? And how well does the system function as a whole? And these are just pretty basic, but imperative to answer. Discussion questions that then these lead to include how will any recommendations function? Because this is really important to ask so that you can think about, once you decide on a course of action, how will it function? How will it work? Are there problems or solutions identified that we haven't addressed? And if this future isn't desirable, what choices should we be making today to avoid it? Because this is a step that we frequently never get to as we work with various scenarios. And yet it's one of the most crucial, because we don't really think of, should we have a contingency here? And how do we develop that contingency? And maybe one contingency isn't enough. Maybe we need 2, 3, or 4 contingencies. Brexit is a perfect example where someone should have gamed Brexit so that they went on television and said and explained to the people who were voting, here are some data, we developed these models, and we have a general understanding of what might happen if we go this route, and here are other models that say what also may happen, so that you can look at second, third, and fourth order effect of decisions, because so rarely those systemic elements are just never considered, and it can be catastrophic.
Anyway, you wonder why did we bring in?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, after no problem. It was distributed, and it's probably longer, and it was a bit longer than I thought.
Allow me when you finish.
But obviously, but based on our intimate, and probably more than anybody else, intimate engagement with a number of national visions for 20 years, and particularly in addition to Malaysia, in Botswana, every year trying to see in what way the vision inspires people, the vision makes people to do things. In other words, how, and in Uganda the same, and Johnson is here, in St. Lucia, in Lesotho, in Swaziland, in Mauritius, you would see that the attraction for finding reasons why people want to follow a vision thing, it went down enormously. And when you listen to Sekitibile Masire, former president of Botswana, why, he will tell you why. And it's not only because of leaders. The leaders who are coming in, they have to face a different type of environment. And they are probably not fit for that. But not only that, there is a question of the need for people to feel that you operationalize visions. You don't implement, you operationalize. You need to see it in working. And then one of the reasons why most of the national visioning processes work, particularly in private sector, but also is being seen in governments where they are developed governments, is if the national visioning is attached to the national security, but not military security, because what she wanted to say was that if you want nowadays, because of the digital emerging landscape and the impact of data, if you want to approach to do reforms or changes or adaptation in the defense or the national security within a country, even as big as US, never mind a very small one, you are unable to do that unless you are intertwining, you're seeing the national defense part and parcel of food security, energy security, agriculture security. Now, and if you do that and you have a process to engage people towards that, you will make people more interested and attracted to actually go towards, at all levels, to go towards an implementation of a national visioning process. Now, of course, as a system, because this is a system, but one doesn't need to go into complexity and so on, there is a lot of data that is being generated and a lot of insights that you can get. And where one, not as a US, that's the kind of from sublime to ridiculous, but not as a big US, even a small country, where it to be able to have analytical capabilities in relation to data, and one has supercomputers in their countries, one has the ability of using the data and training data scientists to be able in prime minister offices and president's offices to support them, to engage people in operationalizing national visioning in a different mode than what it happened up to now. Otherwise, the national visions lost any interest from anybody. They are for sale. They are sub-departments in ministries of economic planning. They are used for, in commercial terms, for political ideology. Political parties themselves, as a number of our fellows are saying, including in Namibia, Deputy Prime Minister, they require some blood to go through the political parties themselves. So there is a need for re-engaging people to have to get people to feel that they have something to contribute. And of course, through open data, through all these various digital, we know that in many, many countries, the landscape, people feel that they could participate. In Jordan, Ihsan, while he was doing, and he will talk about it in Jordan about this dialogue, and Omar the same, as soon as they finished, or even before they started, they used Facebook to mobilize people. So that you didn't just tell people, people came back and went back to them. So there is a lot of data that requires to be put to work for these national visioning processes and to help emerging new leaders who are leading national visioning processes. Now, this was a kind of presentation from the point of view of someone who is not only herself but a whole team who is looking at how on earth could they manage the forthcoming new generation of a new president in the United States. is there clear what vision is emerging or how and so on? It's not clear that. There is a new movement, there is a new approach. And without going into the details of that specific situation, you can see that happening in most of the countries. There is a need for integrating, interconnecting all the various government departments, public-private sector, the links, in a different mode than before, and for a purpose which is common, national security. In addition to the kind of usual thing that you want to be better, your child want to be better in 30 years' time. So there is, the issue of data comes in relation to potential tools that are required to be taken very serious, because the digital technology is available in Lesotho, in Egypt, in Malaysia, anywhere, in the United States, in the same mode, and it has the same impact. Hence, there is a need for new way of looking at national visioning, and the smart partnership there has a very big role, bigger than ever. So that's the reason why I wanted to make sure that the issue of national security is brought in not in a conventional way, but is brought in the sense that it's something which is required from each and every country, doesn't matter how developed or undeveloped is. Without that, and is defined in broad sense, food security, energy security, and whatever other security. And then people are getting engaged into that, and they are using data, they are using mobile. It's just required a new type of dynamics. Now, Botswana is, after how many years, Lekoma, 20 years or so of national vision, and Mpo is on. Impo, you are online?
Yes.
Yeah. The dynamics that took place for 20 years, in each and every corner of the country were absolutely incredible. But unfortunately, there wasn't the possibility to pass on the data and the accumulated strategic insights to the new government structures that have emerged at the same time, inevitably. So therefore, there is a disruptive kind of period in between 20 years of national cohesion and of a most impressive manner, which needs to be written about it, and the new vision that has emerged for the next 20 years with the occasion of 50 years anniversary, which themselves they don't know is a national strategy, which probably you want to talk a bit about it, Umpo and Lekoma, which emerged, but it's not very clear how the process of visioning from now on should take place. And where from? Is it from within the President's office? Is it from the National Ministry of Economic Planning? There should be a National Strategy Center. So what Sheila is saying is that even they themselves are looking at how the long-term foresight for a country could be integrated as we go along from today onwards. So do you want to come in, Umpo, to reflect a little bit about this?
Please. Right there, Mihaela,
please.
To say that once you have a vision, there is need to establish a theory of change which underlies the vision itself, which would be useful for evaluating and assessing the implementation process of the underlying assumptions, as well as to ensure success and reasons for performance observed and the results achieved, and a way of sustaining the achievements and the successes. Because when Vision 2016 was established in 1994, it was an outcome of national consultative processes across board of all the business community, government, tribal authorities, academia, civil society, tribesmen, and every person had a contribution to come up with the aspirations which made up Vision 2016. And these aspirations, they determined, the focus was for Botswana to achieve prosperity for all by 2016. And by the way, the milestone came to an end in September 30th, 2016. And that there was need that through that vision, a sustainable growth and equitable distribution of wealth be achieved through a safe and secure environment of all Botswana. So the aspect of security, as mentioned earlier, comes into play. Now, the vision document itself provided a broad framework centered around the vision pillars that were intended to guide Botswana's strategic thinking and policy making, and would also form a rallying point around which Botswana would unite. Unity also is was very key. But it had no mechanism for dealing with conflicting objectives or making necessary trade-offs
between one and
or
another.
Prioritizing. And as a result, it was difficult to implement the document as a blueprint. It did not elaborate on the means of getting prosperity for all. The document only introduced the process of defining the actions that were required to achieve the goals, but was not a strategy for achieving goals. The expectation was that key players would invest time and effort in developing the required detailed strategy. Now, the question asked at the time when the vision was being formulated, Vision 2016 was being formulated, was what Botswana wanted and how they would know if they had attained prosperity could only be answered with proper strategies guiding the process. And to ensure focus, adequate baseline data was required with appropriate and adequate qualitative and quantitative indicators from all key stakeholders. Central Statistics Office, which is now Statistics Botswana, was a crucial partner for the Vision Council in getting the required statistics and also in providing indicators for some of the pillars. And through collaboration, we were able through time to develop additional indicators with time. At first, the statistics were at national level, but later these were demarcated to district level, and therefore the Vision Council was able to monitor and also report to the districts on how the progress they were making with regards to achieving the goals of Vision 2016. But the biggest challenge was that the data from Statistics Botswana was always lagging behind and not current. Now, another issue is that the national development plans were aligned to the goals of Vision 2016. The processes of driving a national vision required a result-based monitoring and evaluating system to ensure that the programs and the projects were on track and were achieving the intended objectives of prosperity for all. Now, the Vision Council, through partnering with UN agencies in Botswana and through the assistance of World Bank, was able to conduct capacity building, monitoring and evaluation, training programs for government officials and other key stakeholders.
In capacity building for what?
monitoring and evaluating the programs to see whether they were actually achieving the intended objectives of prosperity for all.
Right.
Now, but of utmost importance was that a national vision process required the buy-in and ownership of the vision by a united nation of Botswana, and therefore everyone had to be rallied around the vision. The first step towards prosperity, as according to our vision pillars, was having an educated and informed people, nation, who through their productive innovations would create employment, businesses which would prosper the nation, eradicate poverty, provide the required infrastructural development through the country, promote a better quality of life across board, in the sense that you would have clean drinking water, you would have electricity, healthcare, schools, good roads, etc., good shelter. But now, Vision 2016 was not a government-owned program, and it was driven by an independent Vision 2016 Council made up of permanent secretaries, chief executive officers, chairpersons of key institutions. In the case of government, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning Permanent Secretary, Ministry of State President Permanent Secretary, the Permanent Secretary of Education and Skills Development. In regards to private sector, it was made up of the representatives of the tourism industry, mining industry, and the business sector. And the chairperson of labor unions, the chairperson of House of Chiefs, the chairperson of media, the chairperson, the CEO of Sports Council, the representative of youth, gender, and district councils were all represented as members of the Vision Council. All the activities conducted by the Vision Council, for example, workshops, smart partnership dialogues, conferences, vision awareness district launches, vision awards activities were all jointly hosted with its partners. The structure of the council was based on a smart partnership system, which is, in my opinion, was a key element, as the council was able to promote interconnectedness and interdependence. And through their strength, they were able to address different national issues without fear or favor. However, Mihaela, the effectiveness and impact of the council was weakened by its dependence on government funds, which were always inadequate. A fundamental problem was that there was no clear framework on which the implementation and monitoring of Vision 2016 could be based. And there was no conceptual basis for how the Vision Council could oversee implementation without a statutory instrument. And what basis, what basis would the council direct activities of government, let alone those of the private sector or the civil society? Now, the biggest challenge was ensuring that all activities, programs, policies, etc., were coordinated and that there was no duplication. This could only be attained through if the Vision Council, as the driver of the vision, was properly placed at a higher level above all government ministries to ensure adoption of Vision 2016 reports and implementation of those recommendations by government, and for council to properly monitor and evaluate programs, evaluate progress and achievements. Institutions meant to drive a national vision cannot be part of a government of the day leadership structure. I strongly believe that, Mihaela, that they would function more effectively if there were structures under a national parliamentary system reporting to Parliament instead of the government of the day. This would empower the Public Accounts Committee and the members of Parliament as accountability to the nation, and also promote governance across board and ensure sustainability of the system of a national vision. Such a structure would address the challenge which was faced by Vision 2016 Council of individuals in government controlling and wanting to influence outcomes of research findings. Furthermore, if placed as a parliamentary structure, the caliber of those driving a national vision would be made up of persons elected into positions of leadership, persons of character, driven by the goal to prosper the nation and not to amass wealth for personal gain. The drivers of national vision would therefore have clear set rules adopted by Parliament, because a vision, once established, once a vision is established, it becomes a living entity and not a program nor a project.
Yes.
But the vision needs to be revised to address challenges encountered both nationally and globally, and updated regularly to ensure sustainability of the progress attained. I hope I have been clear. I was trying to
that's
speak
very clear.
slowly, which is something I'm not used to.
Mpo, you were extremely articulated. I never heard you in quite such a way and with so much passion about the 20 years of the Vision 2016. And outstanding. You represented all the visions, and probably you are above Sheila Ronis. You can advise her in how to go about her Center for Complexity and Adaptive Systems in the White House. But you can only do that simply because we've been with you and we can testify. I mean, Johnson is here. We've been with you in the field, which is one thing that when you are articulating all the synthesis of what has happened, it doesn't quite come out the value of the extraordinary interactions that you had in the field every year, at least twice per year, in each corner of the country. Not you yourself, but because of the Vision Council and the vision itself. And without that, the value of data that today could be leveraged from those interactions would be able to take you forward beyond the Vision 2016. So it is, of course, your own point of view about the fact that probably the vision hub for visioning should be in the Parliament, and I think you made very good points and a case for it. But let me just hear a bit Lekoma, who is kind of...
I really don't have much to add, because I was part of what Mpo has just reported. And the only thing is that I think, Mpo really, there's a sense of disappointment, because the new government has just come up with a new vision. It's supposed to be a continuation of vision, but they call it a new vision, and basically distancing themselves from Vision 2016. Yes, and closing the Vision Council. It's been closed. Mpo is without a job now. It's closed. But there's no structure, there's no new structure to continue. So the whole thing is just hanging, in the...
They learn to play politics.
It's not only Botswana,
Yeah.
it's happening in any other countries, and we know in a moment we'll...
So it's a very sad story of something that started very well and promising.
But on the other hand, it's a very, very positive thing.
Well, yes, a lot of things.
And once you prove that it's possible, most likely that will not just be there, because it's not just a structure, a council.
Yeah.
It's actually, there are so many people, everybody was involved in. We know that.
Yes.
And Johnson, you remember when we went to, just 1 second, when we went to, you come in, when we went to, Lekoma wasn't there, in Botswana. What do you remember about that, which made you think about Uganda Vision?
Yeah, I do actually.
You have a mobile. And then I come back to it. You remember there was this quite tribal, traditional.
Yeah. Actually, what I remember
issue.
very well, you know, in Botswana's vision was the translation of the vision into the real, you know, dynamics.
You could see it.
You know, you see that everybody
You see
is really
people.
engaged, you know. People are really aware of what really their roles are, and then
They're motivated.
yeah, they were kind of motivated, encouraged, and everybody was more on board, you know, from the president, right from the president, vice president. I remember we had a vice president at that time, and he was actually politically so much engaged into the vision and encouraging every individual to be part of the vision. So there was this sense of feeling that, yeah, we are part of it. We need to see it happening, and we need to see all these, you know, issues which embedded within the vision document have been, you know, implemented, you know, which was quite unique, you know, compared to other countries. When you look to countries like, for instance, we are coming from Uganda, you know, it's not more like as it is, you know, in Botswana. To be honest, Botswana is quite unique, you know, from Uganda, because in Uganda we have a vision which is 2040, and it's more into paper, and you know, it's not practical. To be realistic, it's not practical. Yeah, it's supposed to be, of course, you know, very inclusive, but in reality, it's not, you know. Yeah, because people, for instance, the traditional people and, you know, different links, for instance, if you look into the SPM links, you know, all the links, you need to be actively involved and to be part of the consultative kind of, you know, framework, you know, but they are not, you know. It's more, not yet, but we're going. It's almost about to get, you know, finished, and nothing. I don't think nothing much has been done. I remember that was a vision of another vision which expired, I think, you know, before it was nothing was achieved. Yeah. But in this sense, what I'm trying to mean as my 29 you know, I was kind of motivated as first of all, as a younger, you know, politician. I'm a younger politician. I've been contending in Oxford for councillor, you know, and I'm in Oxford, and I've been part of the council. So what I mean is that, you know, we need to see something, you know, which is really very inclusive, you know, where everybody come on board and say, you know what, this is what we want to see, you know, being achieved in such a particular period of time, you know, because if there's no framework, then there's nothing that you're gonna be. And then also evaluation. You need to have actually M1E, you know, monitoring and evaluation to really assess, you know, that what was planned is being, you know, implemented or being achieved, you know, at a particular period of time. For instance, every after 2 years or every after a year, you see that what, you know, this has been achieved. We have a vision which is read by, of course, Dr. Wilberforce, you know. Yeah, he's trying very hard, but then also, as Mofo was talking about, there's need to be a political will, you know, political engagement, for instance, from the president down to the grassroots. Yeah. But Wilberforce may try as much as he can, okay, but then also he may be somehow limited, you know, in so many ways, resources, you know, support from individual, from within his ministry, because it's under Ministry of Finance and Community Development, but then he can still be limited, you know. If he doesn't have the support of the Minister of the Finance, you know, nothing much will be achieved, okay. Yeah. Then also given to Malaysia itself, of course, and I remember, you know, when we were in Malaysia some time back, you know, so when you look at their vision, it was really more practical, and the things that were being achieved, you could see them, okay, that yes, this was the target and the target is being met. Yeah, this is what we want really when it comes to the vision. Yeah, and we should be now on the issue of the data. We need now to involve. It's been left out actually. When you look at most of the visions that have been, you know, drafted, including the vision of Uganda, there's no element of data. All this need to be, because you can't have a vision which is going to be successful without data, having the data. As we said in previously, that you need to know, first of all, to have the number of the people which you have and the way things are being done, you know, all being monitored, you know. That's how you can be able to relate, you know, a vision to the data you have, because how are you going to plan for the people when you don't know really?
A bit of what Tai was saying this morning.
Yeah, the intertwined, there's a need for that, there's a need for that. And Mihaela, my request to you actually, being that the lead into this is to really help as much as you can, the emerging countries, well, of course the developing countries, mostly from Africa, UK, to really be more realistic when they're really coming up with these visions, you understand? Not just depending on the technocrats, coming up and say, what, we're going to get all these people to draft our vision. But then you draft a vision, go on the paper, because everyone can come up with a vision on paper. And from my office, you can sit there and then you do the vision, okay? But a vision needs to be practical, realistic, smart actually. It needs to be smart, okay?
Is there a new role for us? I mean, after listening here, I think learning the mistakes has been extremely beneficial to us. What do you think we should try to do about it? I mean, you personally seem to be very disappointed that the good things did not happen that were wished. But what do you think? I'm beginning to think that there's a new role coming. There's a new role.
It's enhanced by the value of data.
At least applying moral pressure, or something. They shouldn't have fired this lady. They should have kept her, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the new role which we really need to do is to walk the talk. Okay, that we talk so much about it, but then we really need to be actively involved and assessing. As I say, that we need to assess all these.
Can
okay.
I get champions like you in your country? Because it seems that we also need champions that don't depend really just on the government. The parliament is good, but champions like yourself from the society who can speak out.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to the comment.
just in a nutshell. Yeah. As I said, we have champions in every country, okay. But then these champions, of course, they have limitations when it comes, of course, the political, forums. Are they supported? And then are their ideas being able, are they being listened to? If so many people we have, for instance, young people, we have them with so many ideas, and we want to see that things are really happening, the right way they should be. Okay, but when they come up, of course, they tend to be, politicized and then say, maybe, for instance, this one is trying to bring, his or her own politics into the system, which cannot work. You understand?
Now,
Yeah.
I think probably that is not only the case of Uganda, but you describe that is the case probably in St. Lucia, in Mauritius.
Yeah, it's still the case. It's still, but we have models. We have countries, of course, which can emulate. For instance, give example of Malaysia. We've seen Botswana. We've seen South Korea. Uganda was once actually far ahead than South Korea, but where it is now, okay, is having people, who are passionate about their countries, who are nationalists. We really want to see things being changed. Is to go against the establishment, in other words, which.
I don't think it's a question of against. I don't need that. I don't think. Probably.
Not in a political way. Not in a political way.
I think the question is that
all the government structures, and we are here exploring particularly the factors or the impact of the data and digital landscape. Most of the government structures are being made redundant, more or less, for in their ability to engage in the same mode. I mean, people are ahead of the government structure, and is nobody, not one person, to shoot. That is the person. There isn't the entire government infrastructure, and the demonstration of the Sheila she was telling you, was that even U.S. government structures are unable to manage the changes due to particularly digital landscape. But the digital landscape, and particularly the data that people see and leverage without realizing they do that, brings in changes to the code of conduct
in society. And this is where probably Omar and Omar and Ihsan could come in, because they just tested recently. There is a group of smart partners in Namibia who actually they are moving the vision that they have, not from the government, as part of the government, the Harambee prosperity in Namibia, as it's called, but from the grassroots. And what the Mr. Hausiku was asked me to mention to you on behalf of Namibian smart partners who are actually probably watching on this large screen made available by Henk, the private sector, and so on, is that you can see smart partnership at work towards a longer vision. You can see it at the grassroots, in informal sector. You can see it in Katatura. You can see it in links, as we call them, in Lesotho. You can see that. And you could see that for 20 years almost in Botswana. So I think it's a very positive message. It's just that the governments need to be assisted to restructure themselves and to integrate, as far as possible, the use of the value of data in engaging people, because people are ahead of structures everywhere. So I don't know, Lekoma, you want to please finish on Botswana?
The one thing that I really appreciated with the presentation was inclusiveness. Yeah. You see, that the visions fail because I think power is centralized instead of devolving to bring in expertise and knowledge and wisdom from from everybody, and this is really.
But there was another point made by her that as a scientist, and there are other scientists around, if you look at these interconnections at all levels, grassroots or higher and tradition and everything else, these are adaptive type of systems, human systems. And what she was saying is that it's very clear they cannot be controlled. So whoever thinks that one can control these systems, that, like for instance, you close down a vision council and that is an act of control, you can't do that. The vision interfaces will continue.
But you can devalue them
you can,
by not listening or respecting them.
Yeah.
And one of the great fears is that from what we heard from the talk, which was really interesting and moving, was that actually, we'll be careful what we say, but there was a political decision, right, which is not owned up to. When someone wants to junk something, they don't actually say we're junking it. And some kind of action.
Now, I think the issue of visioning processes nowadays is so important because in the context of accumulating data processes from the interaction, that probably we should go beyond or a little bit differently with the program of this session. So the intention was that we are going to have some insights as they happened from the processes that took place last Saturday and about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in Amman, but also what is taking place in Lesotho and probably in Swaziland and in Cyprus. And probably we should also have on the record for this session, which is broadcasted, from Cameroon. And we finish by 5 o'clock, and then we will have our open house specifically on Cameroon way forward for the vision. So, can I start? Who wants to start?
Go into the specific cases,
Please.
I wanted to make a general comment.
Yes.
The way we have been treating visions, national vision, is in so many respects a linear one. You manage it, you decide that it shouldn't be by the government, it should be controlled by the parliament, or it should be an independent
Private
service
sector
or whatever, and we heard about the problems. Now, with Sheila's video, there is a new dimension. It is a national security thing, and it is a complex
Having
system.
a vision is a security thing.
We have a complex system, not only internally with trade unions and employers and manufacturers and technical people, but it's also complex by the way we interact internationally with the trends of the global system, the economic system. So we should view it as we control a complex system strategically, where there are elements of chaotic elements, how you manage chaos. You are not quite sure what tomorrow is going to be, but still you have to have a plan for the next 10 years or whatever, 5 years. So this is a general one, that the national visions that have been evolving in the Commonwealth need to be approached now from the dynamic point of view. My other comment is that we have been talking about data and statistics. Data and statistics is meaningful and useful if they lead to information. So we should be talking about information, as Omar commented in the morning, so that if any of these data and statistics lead only to confusion, it's no use. It should lead to information, and the basis of which we can draw conclusions. Now let's talk about information based on data and statistics. Thank you.
Okay, what about the Cyprus becoming a republic soon?
Well, I would like to say comments. I don't know now. Okay, now I'm optimistic. After 42 years of negotiations, 42 with Turkey, now there is a glimpse of hope that Turkey cannot accept pressure to solve the Cyprus problem. It needs an incentive. And there is an incentive right now. The gas in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Cyprus Economic Zone has gas, and Israel has gas. And the companies which are going to exploit it and explore it, they would invest 3 or 4 billions. And if a private company invests billions, they want time to recover their investment and to make profit. And they have sent a message: we need 20 years of peace. So Turkey, do you want the gas to go to you? Do you want the gas to go to Europe through you? Solve the Cyprus problem so that there will be peace for 20 years. Now, having said that, with the prospect now that we may be able to have a national vision, you remember you came to Cyprus about 10, 15 years ago to start talking about how to formulate a vision. And we soon realized that a divided country cannot have a vision. We have the Turkish community isolated in one department and the Greek community. Now, if we are going to solve the problem, there is hope that we can talk about a vision for Cyprus. However, it's going to be a federal system. And I would like the advice of other people who have experience from federal governmental systems. In what we are talking about for Cyprus is the central government will have the foreign affairs and the national security in the military concept. Only. Everything else is going to be to the Turkish constituent state and to the Greek constituent state. Now, how can you have a vision for each state unless there is a coordinating committee? So this coordinating committee has to be under the federal state. Now, Sheila talked about a White House central managerial committee or something. In the States, it's a federal system. I mean, Louisiana state may sort of behave differently to Los Angeles or other. How can you coordinate things in a federal system? Anybody has any experience?
Thinking mode.
Yes, right, but
Well before you require that vision to be
Right.
initiated, which might be at the beginning of next year.
yeah.
Next year, we are almost a year.
We are looking forward for a plebiscite in July to approve the agreement, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's quite in Lesotho, the vision and the Smart Partnership Hub very actively part of it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Yeah, in Lesotho, the vision document is there. Every time when the nation is planning, the vision has been taken as a central document, whereby all of the documents that have been put in place in terms of planning for the nation are being drawn from the vision. Like, oh yes, yes, yeah, yes, and that also makes us to be sometimes to be ashamed that not each and every piece of the vision has been implemented. We have documents like a poverty reduction strategy, national strategic development plan, which are drawn from the Vision 2020. But in actual fact, I could say the vision itself does not have the custodian or the driver of the vision. So that also makes things to be difficult. Like they have said that Lekoma was saying, and the Mempo, they were talking about the implementation of the visions. Then sometimes the new government comes in and the trend is just broken because of different perspectives of the governance, you know. So that is the main problem. But yes, what is what is really needs to be done is that we have to take the route that Botswana was taking, to have a council of which cannot be shaken by the politics when the government changes. So because of the review of the nations in terms of the 50 years celebration, we have been celebrating, and because of that, the government was saying, okay, let us look back of what we have done during the 50 years, and then where are we going after the 50 years? So that is where we went back to the what we call the Agenda 2063. So that also is forming the basis of maybe it's going to form the basis of review of the Vision 2020. So there are so many processes that has been taken, like
the last few good months. And it's still happening.
yes.
So
yes,
you have the ability probably to shape up the vision process because of that.
yeah, we
When
can
you say you,
we can
the hub.
still continue because that the happenings are not shaking even the structures which are in the government right now. Yes, so.
Probably you read on data on internet and so on about what is taking place. You can't avoid not to read it. But
the smart
very
partnership,
resilient.
The smart partnership in Lesotho, we have met with the academia link to come up with the strategy of how to go forward. Therefore, we had a dialogue that was organized by the Smart Partnership and the university to make sure that we review. That was happened last month. Yes. So we were looking at the agenda 2063, and also looking at the objectives of the UN, of how we can go forward. And that paper is meant to be inclusive in the paper that has been thought to be taken place by the Minister of Planning, whereby they are going to look back and whether they can go forward. How are we going to go forward after 50 years? So that is the way that we are doing things, and there are so many things happening. We are still tapping to the pillars that are found in the Vision 2020, and we are still continuing some of the activities. But the problem is that we have to make people to understand the concept of smart partnership, because even some of the people who are in the higher the authorities are still not understand the concept. The new ones, yeah, of course, the new ones, yes.
One thing that probably you will have to take up on is this issue of resilience, and that is based on the networks that you have, and which are almost a given natural feature in Lesotho. I don't know if it is because of mountains or why, because, but or in Southern Africa, Lesotho always was an oasis of for an engaging of all the other networks. The same was in Swaziland, but there is a very special feature in Lesotho. And as he was saying, George, probably the tactic in relation to the water, the tactic in relation to the diamonds, the biggest diamonds anywhere in the world that have been discovered in Lesotho. I mean, that might be an impetus to kind of move the vision and motivate people in a slightly different way than just as it was up to now. But anything from quick from Swaziland, and then probably from Omar and from Ihsan. The Vision 22, where does it sit at the moment? In which department? Ministry of Economic Planning. We've been there together, and we had a very good discussion with a representative of Links in Swaziland, but there was a feel that there has to be more engagement. Right?
Yes, the vision sits within a department called PPCU, which is Public Policy Coordinating Unit. It is in the Prime Minister's office. We are in the same building. They're just on the ground floor. They occupy the whole of the ground floor, and we are up on the second floor. So that's the unit that is looking after that, and we facilitated the development of indicators for the vision. So we had a whole dialogue session at Espayani Lodge where we're looking at indicators in terms of how we will measure achievement of certain aspects of... Oh, okay. Yeah, we actually had a dialogue to actually come up with indicators, measures of achievement on how far we have gone with the Vision 2022. So the whole vision sits with a department called Public Policy Coordinating Unit, which is responsible for the implementation of that. It is part of the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development, but it sits with the Prime Minister's office. Yes.
Okay, but there is a need for going beyond the technocracy indicators and so on, which is what came out from the media release about a month ago.
Yeah.
And that was what was the main thing that came out, even from the His Majesty's representative of the traditional.
Yeah, well, they feel there's a feeling that Smart Partnership should actually take the lead and do more to actually assist the country achieve on the visions.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a feeling that on the areas of technology, the exposure that Smart Partnership has would be very useful to actually assist the country to move forward in terms of having dialogues that would expose the country to the cutting edge technology.
Okay. Now the thank you, Moses, and very quick from Iksan first, and from Omar, and then probably Boniface. We will be probably going, just announce what has happened, and then we'll go into the Cameroon discussion.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mihaela, for speaking about total security, not national security.
Yeah,
total security means, physical security, economical well-being, religious and traditional freedoms, etc., etc. So I'm glad you did that, because although this lady worked with Clinton, she does not realize that Clinton for 3 years did not listen to a national security briefing, and he said, I get my news from the CNN. But I was in Washington recently, and this is a very serious issue, and I talked to many people involved in national security. And it is a very critical item. Who is the National Security Advisor, and this is being sorted out. Now, I think we talked about these visions. You are absolutely right. Maybe the follow-up should be done by somebody outside the government, because if the governments in growing economies like my government, every minister comes, he calls the minister before him a donkey and changes everything he planned. So we're marking time all the time. We don't progress. I'm right, huh? Okay. Secondly, I think that we're suffering from something. We always said that a hub can be a person. I'm looking back to Sakamani and the problems we had initially before he bought the Smart Partnership, and he became a champion. I think these critical hubs should always have something to do with the progress of the vision. I really believe in that. Very good. Now, thirdly, you want to know about maybe Jordanian dialogue. Well, we noticed that there's a lack of cohesion, a lack of keeping to our traditions between the young and the elderly also being selfish and not very functional in the eyes of many, and sometimes true. So we decided to have a dialogue. Now, the Arabic understanding of dialogue is having a debate where you actually you win from the zero sum. I won the debate, I made his face red, he couldn't answer my question. It took about 18 meetings. What helped me was the old brochures of our dialogues and picture with Umar, the science advisor of Mahathir and Mihaela. It did carry quite a lot of weight, because they respect Mahathir and they respect Malaysia. And it took about 18 meetings actually to get the young people around, because they had very serious questions, and they made mistakes by asking questions. Not mistakes, they asked questions like, okay, if we take decisions, who's going to execute them? So we had to explain, this is what comes out is a collective wisdom, and it's up, then we have a moral strength slowly, that's how things improve, and you can say, okay, we're not going to elect anybody to these positions if he doesn't abide by the outcome of the dialogue or the recommendations of dialogue. I had quite a lot of problem in getting these people to do. I had two excellent people working with me. They were on Facebook. I had to translate what's a dialogue, what a dialogue is not, and everything in those 2 pages, and from the Limitless, and it was a reasonably good translation. And this was on Facebook, on educating people so that they know it's a dialogue, it's not a debate, it's not an argument, you see. And then it was like a normal dialogue from the hat, people sat, and it's amazing. It's like all our dialogues, our first dialogues, people are very skeptical. But once they start in a dialogue, it was like the other dialogues. I mean, they were saying, how about table 14, feed time, etc. And we had a mixture of very well educated people with PhDs, etc. But we had a very good representation of the youth also. And the good thing about it was that where they did not agree, they voted, and they accepted the vote, and it was reported. They said, we vote. I asked everybody to speak because it was the first time, and we had about 160 people who came in, volunteered when they heard about this. And they have been very enthusiastic. They want another dialogue now. They want a dialogue between the youth. Because they found their way to express themselves without shouting, without etc., and then talking in a civilized way, and they started believing in the win-win outcome. It was very difficult to explain to them. One of the people went to the computer and got out about 60 pages of the role of facilitator, etc. Of course, one of them is, it was like the old shell thing we had. The facilitator was perting the outcome, controlling things. I said, no way. The facilitator is no. Is a dialoguer. And everybody has an equal part of the dialogue. He controls and owns so much of it. And the catalyzer is the usual role of the catalyzer. The catalyzer were more mature people who could say, but it was excellent, and people are really hoping, and they want to do another dialogue. Now, this was not a national vision, but to go to the national vision, it's very disappointing to hear how the regression happened in national vision, but we heard a very, very good, this is a very good lesson. And I think we should really maybe rethink about a modification of our role, because we have excellent relationship with the top leadership in these countries, and it should continue. It should not be, I think it is too important to be left to ministers and governments. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? How did you label what you were going to do? What did you say to people when you...
Well, I said, this is no Circassian tradition. We're getting in shit. Our society is breaking. So I'm sorry for people listening. And we must build our cohesion. We must go back to our customs, because Circassian society is the only society where people look forward to growing old, because their respect increases as they get older. I'm sure this was the same before. So there was a program done in German, translated by English by somebody who went to Caucasus. And those people in Abkhazia live for 120 years, and they get married at 70 again. So, it is really. So it was really because we're losing our traditional way. We were becoming very silly on our comments on Facebook, etc. And we were not going to the center of gravity and seeing what's the problem in the relationship between the young and the older generation. Are we on the same wavelength? How can we get on the same wavelength? How can we improve ourselves? And this happened very good. This started actually in an election thing where somebody was rude to an elderly man, and the elderly man was too polite. I mean, he was an ex-special forces guy. He could have, but I stood on a chair and I said, this is not the way things are done. and we must start talking to each other. And I think we got on the most important thing was cohesion. Thank you.
Omar, did you recover from Saturday? Just this Saturday? Dumpo, do you hear that?
Pardon?
Do you hear Omar?
No.
We recall that vision has been described as a dream with a deadline. Deadline. So developing the vision statement is a smart partnership exercise because you need to bring everybody in. It's not just a government vision, it is a national vision, so all the stakeholders must be involved. And implementation is a smart partnership effort too, because it's not any one sector to implement. It's not the Vision Council to implement. It's the government, it's the private sector, it's individuals, it's everybody has to implement. So that is a smart partnership effort. But before implementation can take place, vision has to be translated into policy, and policy into action plan. And policy, my definition of policy is a statement of intent with justification. And this is when you need the data for your justification. So the data is not just for anything. Because it is big hoo-ha now about data, you want to put data in everything. It's not. To justify what you want to do in your policy, you need the data. And then at the implementation plan, at the implementation, or to carry out the implementation plan, you must have somebody with oversight looking that implementation is being done. So implementation oversight and implementation coordination. But to move a vision, it has to be done by the government, because the vision you want to achieve is for the whole country. So in Botswana, it looks like that the government has the vision and has given it to the Vision Council to implement. Has it got the authority? Has it got the mandate, the authority, and the capacity? If it hasn't, it cannot implement the vision. So the Vision Council, is it advisory or is it an action council? If it is an action council, it must have the mandate. It must have the...
Yes,
just a point of correction. The Vision Council was not implementing. It was facilitating.
Then how can you say...
The stakeholders on board for them to be the implementers, not the Vision Council. This mandate was to monitor the progress of implementing the vision goals by the stakeholders.
Yes.
Okay, I got it, because you said the Vision Council was to implement the vision, which is not correct. But the Vision Council, the vision and the implementation must be a government project. It must be incorporated in the government implementation plan. It must have the necessary money to be allocated. And then out of that, you can say this is the government's role, this is the private sector role, and you need to look how the private sector can come in, and then all the others. So it is not just something you say you have a vision and then you pass it to somebody else. The government must own it too. But in developing the vision, the government has to listen to all others. And during the implementation, you have to continue to evaluate. And there must be put in place mechanism for corrective and adaptive for changes. Because vision, national vision, is a complex adaptive system. Yeah. So if you do not have that, from what I hear of Botswana, there is no, things are not happening, but there is no mechanism to review and for the government to make it happen. You look as if it is passed on to somebody else to do. I'm sorry, that's the way I look at it. So if to make it work, it has to be part of the government development plan, and it is to be given a government allocation for the thing to happen. Just to take simply, if you want to translate the objective or vision through the technology pillar, for me, to implement a vision objective from the perspective of technology, you look only at four critical technologies. Technology for meeting basic needs, technologies for quality of life, technologies for wealth creation, which is then all the science, technology, and innovation, and technologies for governance. Technologies for governance must include management and security, which we talk about. That's part of the whole thing. So if you look at that, those are the four critical technologies which can be divided, which can be looked into more detail. And who to implement that must be government, private sector, and all the other stakeholders. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Even with that understanding in Malaysia, we never achieved the full objective for Vision 2020. To give one indicator, the objective for Vision 2020 was by 2020, the GDP per capita in Malaysia was supposed to be a high income group of 15,000 USD per capita. Today we have only achieved the last count, 10,320 USD per capita. So it's still a way to go, and there's not so many years more left. And it is now worse because the currency translation is very bad. USD to the ringgit is now 4.4, 4.5 to 1 USD. So if you get the conversion, maybe we are less than 10,000 USD now. So, but the implementation of Vision 2020 goes into part of the 5-year development plan, and certain things need to be done. And yes, that's a 5-year rolling program. So program. So it has to be looked in that manner. And if you don't do that, if it is not part of the government implementation development program, then it's a dead loss. Private sector is not going to do that. They have got their own agenda. But if private sector is given the role to make this happen, and there are many ways they can do that, then there is a chance that they will participate. So that's my comment in relation to this. From what I hear, yes.
Mahaira, I just wanted also to, following what Omar has just said, to say that in the case of Vision 2016, Botswana had the National Development Plans 9 and 10, which were aligned to the vision goals.
Yes, yes.
And the budget, yes. That we had that in place.
Yes.
But the issue is that the vision itself, because the national development plans, they should be drawn from the vision. Now, the ownership or the ownership of that vision should be an entity which is not government controlled. Because when the government changes, they might just change the vision if it's in their control. But if it's at another level where they don't have the control to change it because it's of national interest, then whichever government comes into power, their mandate is to ensure that they implement what the people want, not the other way around. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay. A vision always runs the risk of when the leadership changes, because the leadership. What our professor was telling earlier was BT. Before Trump, BC, you don't know what's going to happen, right? So likewise, all this vision will change if the leadership changes. If you follow if you follow what South Korea does, a vision or anything like that they want to do, that is enshrined in a law. So in science and technology, there are no less than 14 laws for science and technology, so that any new government, any new minister coming in cannot just change it at his whim and fancy, because that's part of the law. So if you enshrine or if you anchor your vision into a law, then the new president or the new prime minister even cannot change. But in Malaysia now, no, I mean they can go back to parliament. They can go back.
The data should be such that it's meant to is result based in order to promote the quality of life. If it's just data to ensure that projects are being done or plans are being achieved without changing the quality of life, then I don't see how the worth of the data, because an ordinary grassroots person should see that their lifestyles have changed because of the data which was produced.
Okay, that's what I mentioned. The four critical technology to support four critical needs, and the four critical needs is basic needs. And then the next one is quality of life. There may basic need in one situation can be quality of life in another situation. Yes, Sivan? Okay, basic need, quality of life, wealth creation, which is of course technologies that will improve our businesses and all that. And then of course governance. You need technology for governance, and if we include total security that we talked about earlier, then there is a lot of technology that is required. But that is the thing as of now. Now this year, last month when the Prime Minister announced the new budget, he talks about NT50, National Transformation 2050 in Malaysia. So that is not quite replacing 2020, because 2020 is still there until 2020. Yeah, but it so happened that the Academy of Sciences Malaysia has been working on envisioning Malaysia 2050, and that we started that work since 2010. But and then Malaysia 2020, the aspiration is just simple: a harmonious, prosperous, sustainable Malaysia. But what they have been concentrating on the prosperity bit, looking at technology trends and which technology Malaysia can take advantage of to increase wealth creation and prosperity. So I wasn't involved in the prosperity bit, but when I listened to their presentation, nobody talked about harmony. So I mentioned to them, without harmony, 2020, 2050 is not going to be there. And what is happening in Malaysia is a lot of new development which is causing disharmony, which is causing disunity. So that is the reason why recently I managed to get a group of people to help me develop a dialogue to see how we can use the smart partnership principle to promote harmony, national cohesion, harmony, and unity. But it is not a dialogue to say what should be done. It is a dialogue to say what we can do as individual and as a group. So we spend 1 day last Saturday on the 3rd, bring people together around in the smart partnership dialogue manner, and at the end of that we came up with a code of ethical conduct for national cohesion and unity, and that is not for government to do or for anybody else to do, but for us, the participants of the dialogue, to do. So the next stage for me, for the group, is of course to translate those into action that we can ourselves do, and that we can persuade or influence others to do. Because if you know the 3 circles of concern, influence, and control. So I use that as our concern is national unity. We have only control about ourselves, but if we can do that, we can influence others. So that was the basics of that. But based on the basic principle of smart partnership, we now have a code of ethical conduct. I passed Mahala the rough final draft which need to be edited and to be consolidated. So my next work is to bring everybody else and then translate that into actual action, not just statement of desire or exhortation. So that's what's happening in Malaysia at the moment. That has nothing to do with the government, but I wanted no politician to be involved during the dialogue at all because I did not want that to be that Omar is being used by any political party for this purpose. Yeah, but unfortunately, Asli, the secretariat to the dialogue is Asli, and Asli's director contacted our minister for national unity. So he came at the last to say a few words. So we presented to him our code of ethical conduct just for him to know what we are trying to do. We are not telling him to do whatever it is, but this is what we are going to do ourselves. So he took it away and he was quite happy. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. I got a very old teacher who taught generations. Yeah. Usually they bring minister, deputy minister. I said no. I don't mind ex-ministers coming. I don't mind MPs coming, but no ministers. And it went very well because everybody respected that old man, regardless of some disagreements, and everybody was very pleased.
I mean, Mihailo,
these are emerging trends.
I was going to say it, but this is very interesting because in the past we had always said that the endorsement of heads of state and government, what I call the motorcades, monarchs and marquees factor, was really important as part of a demonstration that I hate the word, but all stakeholders were involved. Yeah. And I think the switch of emphasis, which I've heard both from Omar and from Ihsan, yes, and from Silas as well, and from Moses, everyone really, that actually one's got to think as to how one plays this, because early on, when you were making a point in response to what we heard from Paul, you said, Omar, that really, without government involvement, nothing can really happen. And however good or bad the government is, and I emphasize good or bad, or in between, therefore we have to face that question. So there's quite a tactical question for us to address. But as we look forward beyond the age of dialogues in big tents, and take a different view of what the tent is. And Mihailo, this has given us some insights today. I think we've got to address that question. So it's something to think about overnight, perhaps.
Now, we need to come into Cameroon, but after Alan.
I think what I will say will make a transition. Maybe.
To Cameroon, yes.
Because what I have to say is a bit provocative. Not every country in the world has a national vision currently. Sometimes there is an alternative to a national vision, which is the program on which a president is elected by the people. And if you take the United States, we have seen recently that the national vision for the United States today, was expressed in very different ways during the presidential election. There are really two ways to see. Now, there is also a gray zone between shaping a national vision and shaping a national strategy, because we heard from the USA that they are working on a security strategy and so on. So maybe the question we should ask ourselves is, in what circumstances can we advocate that there should be a national vision developed along the lines that we propose? And I contend that there is a need for a national vision when the leap to jump is big. When the leap to jump is big, then you need to sort of sublimate the energies in the country, because the leap is big, like you had in Malaysia. You said the leap, we want to be in the group of... and we have a number of nations within the Smart Partnership that are in that situation, where they have a big leap to jump. So then there is a case for a national vision. Now, data, and this may come back to the subject of the day, we need to bring the message across that mastering, managing data is key for a number of components of a national vision. Take, for instance, mineral resources, extractive industries. We heard in Tanzania something which I found very interesting, that they built a sort of independence in the knowledge that they have on data, geological data for the country. Because if you don't have the geological data, you cannot negotiate with the big companies to exploit your natural resources. Take water, same case. You need to know what water resources you have, etc. Take agriculture. You need to master data on the climate. There have been in Kenya or in India, for instance, the farmers on the ground. They have computers powered by solar energy, and they have access to climate data and also to market data to optimize their farming. And they have solar energy, decentralized solar energy, to power their computers in order to access that data. So that capturing, mastering data is key for some of the major elements of a national vision in developing countries who want to make the best of their natural resources. So I'm saying that, and this is maybe a link with Cameroon, because Cameroon has wonderful, great natural resources that they have not tapped so far.